Well, hello, everybody. We are here with Kitty Edwards, and I'm so excited to introduce Kitty to you because she is a really special practitioner who knows a lot of things about end of life, caregiving, grief, but in an extremely beautiful, special way. So, Kitty, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it's my honor, truly my honor. So, for the listeners, I want to tell you just a little bit about Kitty before we get started. Kitty is a shamanic practitioner who helps those confronted by terminal illness find the courage to release their fears. She's an author, teacher, and community organizer in Boulder, Colorado. She is the executive director of the Living and Dying Consciously Project, which is a nonprofit organization that helps individuals hold sacred space, step into ceremony, and practice rites of passage. I already feel better just from reading that. So can you, before we kind of get into some of the questions I wanted to cover with you, just to make sure our listeners know, can you tell them what is a shamanic practitioner?
Well, shamans are medicine men and women that come from all the indigenous cultures of the world. I had the honor of studying with medicine men and women, shamans, in Borneo, in Southeast Asia, South America, and North America. I learned many techniques that they use in the rainforest, in the top of the Andes Mountains, all different kinds of environments to help people approach death with courage. So a shamanic practitioner now is someone who uses these ancient techniques in their modern healing work.
So how did you even what led you to get into this?
Oh my. Well, I'm a writer, and I was working on a novel, and I needed something to shift the point of view or perspective of the main character. And I began reading about shamans in Borneo, and that's where the novel took place. So I went out to Borneo and studied with the shaman in the Iban tribe in the rainforest there. And I was so fascinated, I came home and wanted to further my education in that work. So
you just got hooked.
I got hooked.
Oh my gosh. Well, this is going to be an exciting interview because I think you're going to open a lot of people's eyes to a lot of things and techniques and processes that maybe they just weren't even aware were available to them. So I'm so excited about this. So let me just ask, how is death a rite of passage? What is that? What does that mean?
Well, first of all, rite of passage, we are all familiar with rites of passages like baptism, marriage, graduations are all rite of passage. It's when you approach a threshold and you cross over a dividing line between your past life, what was in the past, and step into the future to a new life with new responsibilities. For instance, with a wedding, two single people come together, they're married, and then they step into a future together and make a commitment and have new responsibilities. That is a rite of passage.
Right.
So if you approach death as just another very important rite of passage, there are preparations to be made beforehand, just like a wedding. So there's lots of things to do.
Right. Okay, so how do anybody prepare for death as a rite of passage? What are some of those things that we need to do to prepare?
Well, I'm sure other speakers in this summit are talking about filling out living wills, preparing wills, assigning an agent, your medical agent, talking, having conversations. In my practice, we call those literal preparations. They're things you absolutely need to do. But we step it up a little bit. We ask you to step into the mythic, where you become the storyteller of your life so that you can find purpose in your life. You can do life reviews. You can work with relationships that you have with people if you need to bring them up to date or bring them to a close if you are approaching death. Yeah. So mythic is you're the storyteller. And then we also ask you to prepare energetically. Now, what that means is that you have a practice of letting go. through our lives, we have many, many small deaths.
Mm.
Maybe we've lost a job, or we've just moved to another town. We've lost one community and moved into another community. If we energetically let go, have a practice of letting go, honoring where we've been, and then turn and face where we're going, that can help us in that big letting go of death. Other energetic practices would be giving permission to die, giving yourself permission to die. Now, that doesn't mean you want to die. It just means that you're ready to face the future no matter what comes. So you give yourself permission to cross that threshold and step in to your new life, wherever you might be in the phases of your life. So,
Yeah, and as a working in hospice, oftentimes the clinical people that care for our patients, not always, but it's common that as people approach the end of life, they sleep a lot. And what our clinical staff will say is that, they're doing a lot of internal processing, which
mhm.
is why they sleep a lot. They're coming to terms, and maybe what you're saying is exactly what they're doing is they're processing what's about to happen, right? Have
Yeah.
you found that in your hospice work?
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring up sleep, because for a shamanic practitioner, dream time is very important to process those changes that are going on in our daily life. It's so important to get the sleep you need. Now, as you approach death, your systems are slowing down, your physical systems are slowing down, but also you're processing um, all the emotions
Mm-hmm.
that come up, and boy, do lots of emotions come up, like fear and grief. Oh my goodness, so much grief at the end of life, that you need that time to process so that you can approach that threshold of death.
Yeah. And speaking of that, we also have grief counselors that work with the patient. Many times people think grief counseling is just for the family that's left behind. But to your point, we have a lot of patients that are afraid to die. And so the work they do with the grief counselors helps them. And I guess in addition to the things that you teach, come to terms with that grief of the fact that they're about to lose their life, and
Right.
they're not going to get to see their loved ones in the physical like they're used to.
Yeah. And I think, all of us have to die. And if we begin to have a practice of approaching death as a rite of passage, that we're more prepared at the end, knowing that this is a process we must go through. It's not an option. Um,
Right,
Nobody gets out alive, right?
right, right.
So it's an interesting practice, I guess we'd say, like doing exercise to keep your
Right.
body active. This is preparations. This is activities of being aware of your emotions, your grief, your fear, your love, your compassion, and living joyfully all the way to the end.
And part of what you do is you have workshops that teach people how to do these things, correct?
Yes, I do. Through the Living and Dying Consciously project, we offer workshops. One is called Conscious Transitions, Living with Dying.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably our most popular workshop. We
Mm-hmm.
also teach a workshop called Gifts of Grief, and another one called Once Upon a Time, which helps people step into that storytelling phase.
Right, right,
So,
right. Oh my gosh, so wonderful. So another question I have is, I understand the literal task to prepare for death, which you were saying, the living will and the healthcare power of attorney, things like that. But you mentioned a little bit about the mythic preparations. Are there other mythic preparations that come under that whole? Because there must be so many.
oh, there's so many. Well, I think the most common one people know about is a life review,
Right.
where you look back on your life and you tell the stories, and you talk about the relationships you've had, and you communicate those stories to your relatives, your friends, or just to yourself sometimes. But
Wow.
there are other mythic forms, and one is ethical wills to leave behind what spiritually held you during this lifetime. That might be prayers, it might be poetry that really touched your heart. It might be a way of living. It may be your religious practice. You leave your wisdom behind in your ethical will to the next generation. And hopefully it's like writing a love letter to future generations. So instead of just knowing they had a great grandmother, that they might be able to read something about their great grandmother and how she thought and how she lived her life ethically, spiritually, and mythically. So that would be a different element of mythic preparations.
That's such a beautiful gift for your family. Oh my goodness.
Oh.
If they write it down, or even I guess they could record it, right? Or videotape
Oh, they could record it. Now we can record it, audio, video, so forth. But even making up a file of different things that inspire you in your lifetime is a wonderful gift to leave behind. Even if you don't write down in your own words what these mean, this is a part of what inspired you. Another thing, well,
please go ahead.
is to leave a legacy. And
Right.
a legacy can be very small. It can be, it doesn't have to be money. It can be something you could do for someone or say to someone before you leave this planet. So leaving a legacy and thinking about how you want people to remember you, or how you can leave a gift behind, is a wonderful process to go through.
Yeah, that makes me think of when you say something that it's like, oh, my mother used to say that, or when I hear my son say something that he heard come out of my mouth and now he's saying the same phrase, that sort of living on. And it also made me think of a medicine woman I know who said to me, and I guess this is part of Native American tradition, that what you do in this lifetime is supposed to benefit the next 7 generations.
Yes. Yes.
That's kind of what you're talking about.
Right. That is the legend and lore, is that you want anything you do ripples into the future down 7 generations. So you want that to be a really precious gift that will ripple down. So that would be leaving your legacy. Very sweet. Another mythic preparation is to prepare your celebration of life. To actually think about how you would want to celebrate your life. We would call that a memorial service or a funeral service after the fact, but there's no reason not to do it before the fact. And they can do it after the fact as well. I've worked with lots of clients, helping them create a ceremony that reflects who they are, their legacy, their ethical will, and they wrap it all together into this wonderful, rich celebration, so that when they leave, their loved ones who are grieving know that they are leaving a message after they have passed away. So it's a wonderful mythic preparation for
And I will validate what you just said. I know of at least one patient in the 12 years that I've been at hospice that they wanted to attend their own funeral. They I don't want to miss that party. I want to be there.
Good for them.
Listeners may be going, what? But no, absolutely. Yeah. And I do love before, if they want to attend and be with everybody. And then also after they're gone. Because, I think oftentimes the funeral is for the people left behind. The person who's transitioned is good and they're on their next path and journey and dimension. But the funeral is a very healing, or memorial service is a very healing thing for the people left behind that are going to miss them.
Yeah.
If you think of any other mythic preparations, just interject them. This next thing I wanted to just kind of ask was, what energy processes should I or our listeners practice for death? And maybe even explain what that means, and then what exactly would that look like?
Well, energy is something, energy comes from our nervous system. We have energy fields in our body and around our bodies. We are energetic people. And so energy practices are ways to calm our energies. If you're really stressed out, of course, getting some sleep would be a way to calm your energies, really simple way. But if you have a practice of letting go, say you come home from work from a busy day, and you have a practice of sitting in silence or going out in nature, sitting by a tree,
Mm.
so just letting your whole energy calm down, that kind of practice is very important to create early on in life so that when you approach death, you have a way to calm down. And there are many different practices. Yoga, meditation would be some. Simply being in nature certainly is a calming element for many people. So a practice of letting go would be one energy practice. Another one, and you brought this up earlier, which gets a little unusual for people, is if you believe you're going somewhere after your death, you cross that threshold, we believe, as shamanic practitioners, that you're going to be greeted by either loved ones who have passed over or other energies that will greet you. And in all the religious practices of the world, there's an explanation for the afterlife and where you're going. So we would encourage you to sit and think about where you're going and maybe go visit there. Sit and think, oh, I could visit my mother who crossed over. And so spend some time quietly thinking about your mother and speaking to her so that you begin to engage with the spirits that are going to greet you on that threshold.
Now, are you saying this is part of what you call dream time? Meditation?
Oh, absolutely. You can do that in dream time, but you can also do it just in quiet spaces or in meditation. We have a practice called journeying, mm-hmm. where you can journey to visit the people who will greet you on the other side. Mm-hmm. Now, in my practice, I work a lot with people who are dying, actively dying, and we have a process of sitting and visiting that threshold and just opening the door a little bit so we can peek through to see who's over there, so that they get a little more comfortable about, oh, okay, I might get to see so-and-so. I might get to visit with that kind of energy. That would be really fun. So again, this is something that most people aren't used to. It's a little unusual, but I think people do it naturally, especially as they get closer to death. Many, many articles and books have been written about people who have visions when they're close to dying, and they're talking to their loved ones. They're having conversations with people you cannot see.
Right.
And this is what they're doing naturally. We just ask you to prepare a little earlier and find ways to do that.
Right. Now, when I started with hospice 12 years ago, and I first heard the term actively dying, I really didn't know what that meant. Can you explain to the listeners what that means?
Oh, sure. Actively dying is when your system, your physical body truly begins to shut down. Your organs will begin to shut down. So if you have cancer, say, you could live very well with the support of hospice close to the end. And then when you start actively dying, it means that things are shutting down. People may, like you said, sleep more. They may go into a coma. They may not be as aware of the surroundings. Their brains may be slower. So the energies begin to slow down. Certainly indications of that are when the extremities, the hands and the feet, become colder because the circulation isn't working as well as it could. So those are indications of someone actively dying. Thank you.
There's another term often used called they're transitioning.
True, they're transitioning. Right. They're approaching that threshold.
Right. So I am interested to ask you, they see their mom who passed away 10 years earlier or whatever. My grandmother, close to the end of her life, and she was actively dying, I'm pretty sure. I was not there. I didn't get there until the next day, which was the day she died. But my sister and mother said that she started talking about this beautiful house that they were building for her. And she could not wait to get there. And my sister and my mother were like, well, what do you mean? Oh, they're just building this beautiful house. And then she said, I wish they would hurry. Isn't
No,
it sweet?
how sweet.
And then there's 100 million stories like that, right?
Yes, but oftentimes the stories are about going somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Your grandmother was going to her new house. Some people will say, I've got to catch the train,
Right.
or pack my bag. Where's my suitcase? I'm ready to go.
Right.
And so lots of stories about going on that journey.
Right. And I also wanted to circle back a little bit when you were talking about calming, go out with nature, meditation, that kind of thing, to prepare yourself for death. Do you not agree that's a really important thing for caregivers because they're so stressed? And I think you offer a workshop for caregivers. Do you not?
We will be we're rolling out a whole new program for caregivers to help them let go, manage their grief, work on their emotional state of being. Caregivers are so stressed and have so much to do in this culture. Often caregivers don't have this, well, most often caregivers don't have the support they need.
Right.
So we're offering different techniques to help the caregiver take care of themselves.
Right. I had another question in my head, but now I can't think of it. So let me just look at this list. So how do you help individuals find the courage to release those fears about death? That's tough.
Yeah, there's that fear and find the courage. Well, I find that what we've been talking about by stepping in to meet the people and the energies that will greet you on the other side of the threshold is a great way to release those fears, because you begin, as your grandmother did, to see the elements of her new house. So it's sort of, if you don't have a spiritual practice or a specific religion that you practice, you have to sort of step into your imagination and say, well, where could I go? Where could I go? And you create your own mythic story of where I'm going. And indigenous people, Native Americans, people all over the world have created fabulous stories about where they're going after they leave this life.
Regardless of the religion.
Regardless
or religious beliefs or lack thereof.
Right. And so it's very human to wonder. This is a great mystery. We don't really know where we're going. So we ask you to step into the mythology of it. And if you don't have a religious base that you follow, then create your own. That's okay.
Right.
That's okay. And that helps to release those fears. I've worked with scientists that have no spiritual practice. And we work on finding ways of their relating to where they're going. One scientist, we just use the periodic table. And we get carbon and hydrogen and oxygen and helium. And he got so excited about helium because helium takes you to the stars. And he said, I'd like to go to the stars.
Oh my gosh.
And so that was his way of relating to the world around him. He's a scientist. So it made sense to him.
So was this a gentleman that you just worked with, generally speaking, or was this a patient that was dying?
This was a patient who was having many strokes. I worked with him for 1.5 years. And the doctor said these bleeds would continue. He was 70 years old, so he was not that old.
Right.
And he was in a lot of fear because every time he had a stroke, he would obviously lose some function. He had a hard time speaking, had some balance issues, but he knew they would continue, and then he would die. But he never knew when. One big stroke would take him out.
Sure.
And so working with his fear and working with him to create a practice of calming his energies really helped him. So when he did die, I was with him a couple of hours before he died. I was able to work with him and call in those energies of carbon and hydrogen and oxygen because I knew we had shared that, and I knew that's what comforted him.
Oh, wonderful.
So he wasn't actively dying when I started working with him.
Right. Good.
Yeah.
But that probably went a long, long way to help calm his fear when he did reach that point. Wow. So in
Right.
all your travels to all those different countries and continents, what were the similarities and what were the differences in just how the different cultures approach these topics?
Well, shamans or medicine men and women work with the nature around them. All of them are nature based. So if you're working with shamans in the high mountains of South America, they'll be working with stones, rivers, rain, clouds, things that are in their world, and they see them as animated. They have energy and personality, and you call on different elements of nature to help you in your life and to heal you. In the rainforest, Borneo, they have large trees and lots of plants and wood and decay, lots of decay and mold and mushrooms and insects. So they work with nature again to find healing methods using what's around them. So usually the spiritual base of indigenous people always relates to where they live. So
So what if you're in New York and you got a lot of cement around you?
you sure do.
I'm not in New York, but
In Winston-Salem. Well, shamans in New York, you find a way. If you look up through the canyons of New York, the clouds are fabulous because they come and go between the buildings or above the buildings. Going to the park and being close to trees, being able to get out in nature somehow. Yes, you're surrounded by concrete, but there's still nature around you, and you have to seek it out. So it's a little more difficult. And remember, New York is surrounded by water. Uh,
right,
the,
right, exactly,
the
sure is.
island is, and so the water elements are right there, and you can work with water. So
Yeah. So no matter where you are, you can tap into the energy. And one thing we didn't mention on your website, you speak a little bit about the guides.
mhm.
Can you talk a little bit that the different chakras and just a little bit about that kind of part of your practice and maybe some of the things that are incorporated in some of your workshops?
Okay, guides are spirit guides that can lead you or teach you or share wisdom. If you're in a religious practice, it might be the guides of that practice, the prophets, the liturgy. You can read, you can get inspiration from what's written. In shamanic practice, the guides would be nature elements a lot of times, or animals, animal guides. And so you can call on those guides to come and give you wisdom and share their way of seeing the world. Then you also mentioned chakras. That's a Ayurvedic term, comes out of India, the Hindu tradition. Chakras are energy centers in your energy field, in your physical body and in your field. We teach people how to clear their energy field through their chakras. Very simply, it's a daily practice you can have of just calming and cleaning your energy field. So, chakras, these are all terms that not everyone's familiar with, but it relates to one's energy and how we hold our energy.
And
Is that
forgive me if I'm kind of going off script here. So can you speak at all to the differences between things? And again, some of our listeners may or may not have heard of things like healing touch and Reiki, those types of practices.
right? Healing touch and Reiki and body talk is another one, are all energy practices that relate to you sharing your energy with someone else. So if I was working with you, my energy, I would bring myself. And if I sit with you and have tea, and you're sitting with me and having tea, we're actually sharing energy. We might be talking, but we're also sharing energy. So Reiki and healing touch are refined ways of sharing energy between two people or a human being and an animal. You can work with animals with Reiki or healing touch. Those particular practices are not ours. We have other practices, but it's all energy. It's all working with energy between living beings. Does that help? Does that
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And if you want, you can certainly explain what your practices are in this similar context.
Well, I think I mentioned working with the chakras and clearing the energy field. Our techniques are a little different than Reiki or healing touch. I would have to be with you to share that. It's experiential. And I find when I'm working with doctors and nurses, they're going, oh, no, this can't be real. But when you put them in a situation where they can actually exchange energy with each other and you give them a few techniques, they go, oh, I see what's happening.
Right.
So it's
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting.
And I think this is kind of related. I want to be respectful of your time. We're going to wrap up in just a second, but this Native American woman I was speaking of, she would have me, you do this with your hands.
Ah, yeah.
Press them together, and you can feel that magnetic pull, that heat, and which just, it reinforces the fact that we're energy. Yeah. We are.
We rub our hands together.
Is that how you do it?
Yeah, so that you can sort of feel the energy a little different around you.
Yeah. Me. So before we get into your free gift, I'm very excited to tell the listeners you're going to offer a free gift. Tell me a little bit about music therapy and how you guys incorporate that with your practices.
Well, music is vibrations, and vibrations affect your energy. Okay, because energy is simply, it is vibrational. And so music and our energies intermix. And so music can be a wonderful way to calm the energy system, especially as we're approaching death. And we've created a CD recording of harp music by Sue Hoadley, who's a musical thanatologist.
Oh, so what's that mean?
A thanatologist is someone who studies death.
Oh, wow.
She plays music at the bedside of people. She plays harp music primarily. And she has research, and many musical thanatologists will tell you this, that it's very important to start with music that's melodic and rhythmic. But then as someone is actively dying, as we've discussed, you want to move into music that's more dissociative. It's not rhythmic. It's not as you can't follow it as well. Mm-hmm. So the end of this CD has music that's more dissociative for that period of actively dying.
Wow. So who doesn't love harp music? So tell our listeners about the free gift you're going to offer them.
The free gift is Sue Hoadley's CD. You can download it. You can download it for free from our secret link, and I imagine you're going to give your listeners that link.
Absolutely.
And that you can download the different pieces. You do notice from the first piece of music to the last, you'll notice that the dissociative quality of the music increases as you move along. So
wonderful. Well, thank you. That's very generous. So I want to close with just a reminder how our listeners can get in touch with you if they want to learn more about Kitty and the wonderful work she and her team do. Her website is Living and Dying, and is spelled out, livinganddyingconsciously.org. And the free gift is again on your website. I'm going to be sending them the link for that free gift. And that is called Conscious Transitions, Harp Music for Times of Transitioning. Oh my goodness, I have thoroughly enjoyed this. This is just a whole nother level of love and support and caring and just comfort that so many people out there don't realize is available to them. So I really encourage our listeners, if you want to learn more about what Kitty does and what her team does and the workshops she offers and her fabulous website, please reach out to them and learn more. And I'm positive you would be just wildly benefited by it. So, Kitty, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
This has been wonderful. We will talk again soon.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.